Well, welcome back, folks. In the second episode of the work on the exhaust system for the Honda SL125, we're going to start talking about more detail the repairs I need to do. Now, some of this we've already talked about. The collar here, where it connects to the header and mates up with the cylinder head. We went through that in some detail in the previous episode. You will notice the finish is different on this now than in the last video, and that's because I took it to a industrial media blast company, in fact just this morning. I can't fit this in my blast cabinet, it's too big, and though I have a pressure pot complete or full loss system that I could take outside to media blast this, it's below freezing outside and I'm not going to go stand out in that kind of weather. Is cold out and media blast this. So I can rent time on this commercial blasting company's equipment. I've used them before for larger pieces over the years. It's really cheap. I had this done in like 15 minutes and it cost me $7 to rent time on their equipment, and it's big industrial equipment, so it really does a good job. So I want to strip this before I continued on with the rest of the repair work. So on the face side here, and this is the side that faces out, there's really nothing really new to talk about. Here's that dent I have talked about before that I will have to figure out what I'm going to do to pull that out. And I think what I'm going to do is start with the least destructive and work my way out to the most destructive. That is, I'm going to attempt to pull this out first and then see if I can't fill it. And if I have to, as a last resort, I'll cut this out and create a new plate. I'd rather not do that just because it's a lot of work, but necessary I will. On the back side, where we see some of the interesting things that I discovered once I removed the old finish and the surface rust. And let me turn this around. This stud right here I'm pointing to is a new stud because the first one, the original one, broke off when I attempted to get it out. I talked about that before. So this is a new stud, and what I did is drill out the old one, used a time cert, inserted a new time cert, then took a 6mm by 1 bolt and about the right size. This protrudes about 14 millimeters. So I took about an 18mm bolt and I cut the head off and threaded that portion, the cut off portion, in, so I left the factory threads right here. Those are factory threads. So where I cut it off is on the inside, and then used blue Loctite on both the time cert and the bolt, and threaded in approximately 14mm, measuring that with a caliper, and as you can see there, that came out fine. What I did discover when I started the media blasting, though, is more damage than I had originally expected. Now, I knew about this in this area right here. I talked about that before. That's corrosion, I believe. I do not think that is stress. I think that's corrosion or rust. There was this I think is a stress crack right here I'm pointing to, I believe, and that was evident before. It became a little bit more pronounced as I had removed the finish with the media. And you can see a little bit, I think, of a stress crack right here forming, right above this bolt, this original, or stud. The real piece that was a little bit of a surprise, I knew there was something going on here, I didn't know it was quite so bad, is this corrosion. You can see right there. And that oily look is oil, by the way, from when I drilled this broken off stud out, and I used tapping oil and such for the drill and the tap, and it obviously got on the inside, and you can see how it's weeped out a little bit here. That's non-consequential for me. I can work around that. But this corrosion here is pretty bad, as you can see. I don't think it went all the way through. I think it's just the surface part here. There's a separate metal liner or canister on the inside, it looks like. I have a couple options here. By the way, there's a little flaw right here I'm pointing to with my thumb. You can see that as well. So I've got that, the stress crack here, and then this corrosion right here. Most of these don't concern me at all. I mean, for instance, this little flaw right here would be pretty easy to fix. Most of this will be easy to fix. This is a little more problematic. It's not a matter of just trying to weld that closed. I mean, you could attempt that, I suppose. I think, well, there's really two probably primary options for me to fix this. One is to clean it up really well, probably cut this metal away a little bit more to get some of those rough edges away, and literally cut this out and put an overlay patch over the top that would fit over the top of it and then stitch weld it in place. And you could even use that to, suppose, encompass this stress crack as well. And that'd actually be a cover patch. That's one way of doing it. Another way would be to literally cut this out carefully and make a patch that would fit perfectly and then stitch weld that in and grind it off so it'd end up looking smooth. I'm not sure which way I'm going to go yet. This I will probably clean up and weld. This I will weld just to give it strength. This I will just tack weld it and grind it back. Not sure about this yet, this stress crack. I might end up making a patch that will go something like this, and then weld that in place, and then that would cover this. I'd have to drill a hole, of course, for the stud, or something similar, some combination of that. So that's where I'm at with the exhaust system so far. The rest of it cleaned up pretty well. As you can see, there's no holes, damage, or dents in the header itself. It's in this thin metal here of the canister that I've got most of the work to do. So I think what I'm going to do first is I'm going to immerse this whole canister, probably up to about the neck here, in a solution to clean whether it'll be acetone or something similar, to get the debris and the oil out of the inside. And then I'll probably start with this, because this is the worst one, and start cutting this away and see how far this goes. Probably what I'll end up doing is making a patch or a series of patches to cover this. Whether I will inset them and grind them smooth, I don't know yet. I'm not going to show all of that repair, but I certainly will bring you back eventually. You'll get some updates on where I'm at and what I'm doing, but that's the current status of the pipe right now, and I'll be editing this video over the coming weeks as I repair this. Well, it's actually a couple of weeks later now, and I thought I'd give you an update on how the repairs for the exhaust system turned out. Remember, there was a big dent here, and I had cut that sheet metal out, and then I recontoured it to match the original shape of the muffler, and then I just tack welded it in, or stitch welded it all the way around. So underneath this skim coat of high temperature JB Weld epoxy is that original patch. So this is metal under here. This is just a skim coat. I ground it off smooth and then skim coated it, and that's what you see here. I did it several times. You can see the different patches, or the coats rather, the skim coat that I had put on the metal. And there's a couple other minor imperfections here that I repaired with the JB Weld at the same time while I was at it. So this is as complete as I'm going to make it right now. It's a nice contour. It feels really good, and I will do the final skim coating and final sanding of this when I paint the muffler or exhaust system, which will be quite a bit later on when the weather warms up. I'll do a final cleanup, final skim coat, final sand, and then we'll paint it. In terms of the back side, if you remember, let me get this positioned here for you to see. Right there. There was a jagged hole right here that was really a rust hole is what it was. So I cleaned those edges all up, and I debated, again, as I think I mentioned, putting a patch in there, a couple different approaches. What I did is I just filled that with weld, working back and forth, ground it smooth, and then again, this is just a skim coat. There is metal under here. This is just a skim coat of high temperature JB weld, and I also fixed a couple of other minor imperfections here. Those are just dents here, and then there's another one right there. And as I just mentioned on the face side, I'll do a final cleanup and skim coat when it comes time to paint this unit quite a bit later on. By the way, I didn't mention that these nuts right here, those are simply to protect the studs that bracket goes on that mounts it to the frame of the SL125. I just spun those on there to protect the threads while I was grinding and sanding and messing around. I didn't want to damage those threads, so those can spin right off when the time comes. So that's about as far as I'm going to go with the exhaust system at this point until I can paint it later on a number of months down the road this spring or early summer even. One other thing I did want to share with you is I was going through, I'll get some parts here for you. I was going through my parts container where I put the parts as I removed them from the bike, and I found these exhaust, I labeled at the time, there's a label exhaust gasket. And this is the original, I think this is the copper. It's split, as you can see right here. Here's a new one right there. And here's the original that came out of the bike when I removed the exhaust system. And again, I think it just split. But what was really interesting is I found this piece. This was all kind of laminated together like this. And I found this piece, which I believe is the original flange that came off of this end right here. It's steel. I ran it over the wire brush on my wheel and cleaned most of the carbon off of it. It is steel. It's not copper or brass. And I think this got compressed up in there over the years and had never been removed. And I just discovered that. So let me reposition this for you. This is the new part that I made, which emulates a little bit what I think Honda did. I think theirs might have been a little bit deeper. I'm not sure, but I think this originally fit like that. And my new piece is just ever so slightly smaller in diameter. When I say diameter, I mean this dimension here, ever so slightly smaller, but not by much. Maybe 30, 40 thousandths of an inch, maybe a short millimeter. But you can see mine is quite a bit larger, again, to emulate the redesigned part. So I thought that was interesting. I don't remember that being in there. I probably just took it apart. This was all full of carbon and crud and was stuck together. I had to pop them apart. But again, I think that's the original flange. That's going to be it for this video on the exhaust system at this point. We'll come back to this part quite a bit later on when it'll be months down the road before I get to this. I might attempt some filling of these pits. I don't know if you can see that on camera or not, but there's some pitting here from rust. I might attempt to use some of that JV weld to fill some of those pits. I don't know yet. I haven't decided. But for all practical purposes, this part's going to be set aside for now because I can't really do much with it anyway. I could put it on the bike in terms of starting the project up, but I'm not sure whether I'll do that at this point or not. We'll have to see how our timing goes over the coming few months. That's going to be it for this video, folks. Any issues, questions, thoughts, drop me a note. Otherwise, as usual, thanks for watching.